free site plan review committee subgroup meeting for the 4600 Fairfax Drive site plan, otherwise known as the Boston Holiday Inn, and that's site plan 2100008. We're holding a hybrid meeting, public meeting tonight, which enables remote electronic participation as legally authorized by the Code of Virginia per the Planning Commission's electronic meeting policy, which was adopted on July 7th of 2022. Members of the SPRC subgroup for the 4600 Fairfax Drive are participating both here and in person and virtually through electronic means. We have a number of subgroup members participating virtually. Commissioner Splatt is on for remotely. I see that. We also have Melissa Riggio, you're on. That's another remote, and we may have others who will be coming on in the next few minutes. At this time, I'd like to orient everyone to this hybrid environment and cover a few specifics about how tonight's meeting will be run. Members of the public may attend the meeting here in person or electronically by using the Microsoft Teams link, which was provided on the SPRC's webpage, the project webpage, and the county's events calendar, as well as email notifications sent to SPRC email subscribers. Finally, there is a dial-in option, phone option, for those who wish to use it. For our subgroup members who are joining virtually, if anyone loses internet connectivity during tonight's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. And while you're on, please keep your phones and devices muted until you're called upon, and turn off the sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference. For our virtual attendees using Microsoft Teams, please turn off your video feed, and I will address a little later when it's appropriate to turn it on. The Microsoft Teams meeting chat is now live and will serve two purposes. For the SPRC subgroup members who need technical assistance, and for members of the public to add their names to the list for public comment, which will be taken at the end of this meeting. The Teams chat should not, and I say should not, be used for discussions. Those who are planning to provide public comment will still need to do so at the end of the meeting, as the chat will not serve as that opportunity. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public comment period. We are recording right now too. If subgroup members participating virtually wish to be recognized to speak on any item during the course of the meeting, please turn on your video feed and raise your virtual hand in Teams. We're monitoring the video feeds that are on, so I'll know who wishes to speak. If there are any subgroup members participating by phone, so *6 and let us know now. Okay, no one. For members of the public who'd like to provide feedback and comment, you'll be called on to speak at the end of the meeting, and you'll be allotted 2 to 3 minutes to speak on the agenda item, depending on how many people sign up to speak. If you wish to speak, please enter your name in the meeting chat for the virtual attendees, or provide your name to staff if you're here in person, us up front here, and you'll be added to the speakers list. Finally, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the county's website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. That said, we can move on to the meeting. And first, let's go around and introduce ourselves. We'll do in person first, and then we'll move on to the online. And we'll do clockwise.
Hi, I'm Kathy Puskar with Walsh Colucci here on behalf of the applicant.
For you,
Jeff Miller, I'm a neighbor of the 4600.
okay.
Jane Kim, DES Transportation.
Andrea Gearhart, I'm here with Hoffman Associates.
David Smith, Blue Mountain Civic Association.
Jim Feaster, Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Leah Bagley, Planning Commission.
Leah Sarley, also Planning Commission.
Collier Cook, Alston, Virginia Square Civic Association.
Steve Sockwell, Forestry and Natural Resources Committee.
Mark Greenwood with C2E2.
John McIntyre, C2E2. I'll be the primary.
Okay. In the back.
I'm Martina Schneller. I'm here.
Michael Eastwood with Snell Properties.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry, I'm Shepard Beeman, CPHD Planning.
Adam Watson, Planning Division.
Okay, great. Now online, raise your hand, those who are online who are at the virtual table. Commissioner Slatt, you're first.
Good evening, Chris Slatt with the Transportation Commission.
Great, we hear you very well. And Ms. Riggio.
Good evening, Melissa Riggio, Parks and Recreation Commission.
Great, Parks and Rec. Very good. Thank you. I think we now have that all done, and we can now move into the meeting. Our agenda tonight will be, our discussion topics tonight are ground level uses and orientation, site circulation, building massing, and architecture. Those are things. Now, for that, we will have another SPRC. That'll be the third one. Let me tell you right now what those topics will be, so you can save those comments or those questions for that next meeting. At the next meeting, we'll be doing updates to this, of course, but also transportation, landscaping and stormwater management, sustainability, and then the usual construction issues. So that'll be for the next meeting. Again, today we're starting with ground level uses and orientation, site circulation, building massing, and architecture. Before we start, does anybody, why don't we start with having clarifying questions? We have the applicant here and staff, so anybody at the table has questions about, what, remember, we've already had one SPRC, questions carried over, questions about any changes, questions involving any of these three topics for tonight. Now's the time to get into it. Anybody that's around the table or at online? Okay, we have none. So why don't we start with the ground level uses? Okay, I'll kick it off saying that have there been changes in the way the ground level uses have been oriented from the last meeting? I know we have a lobby on Fairfax Drive. We also have loading docks. We have garage entrances. Has anything changed from the last meeting?
I think in particular, we have just clarified those ground level uses along Fairfax Drive and kind of fronting on that shared use path. And we also provided you footprints of the triplexes so you can actually see how those ground floor and those unit floor plans, because we didn't have that before. So our loading dock is still on the southern portion of the property, and the parking entrance is still on the eastern northern.
And the lobby for the big
And
building?
the lobby is centrally located with amenities on either side. We did focus on kind of emphasizing the architecture of that ground floor along Fairfax Drive, especially as it relates to recessing that parking and emphasizing the corner as it faces east toward the Boston Metro.
Are other uses other than simply the lobby facing on Fairfax Drive?
So if you blow it up, there are some amenities, and in particular, we focused our dog washing area and pet spa and bike storage as it relates to that shared use path. We thought there was good synergy between those two uses because they all have direct access out towards that path so that they can be used by the residents of the building. And then just a little more kind of detail as to the main uses you'll see there in that area.
Okay, are there windows for the bike room and the fitness center and the lobby out to Fairfax Drive?
Yeah, do you have those elevations?
I think there should be some,
Yeah.
if not
I don't know
elevations,
what
in the
page it
renderings.
is. Yeah, there's
Yes,
some renderings
Let
right
me see if I
there.
have something that's closer up.
And you, right there might be good. So right there, there's windows
Okay.
that turn, where am I?
This is,
Oh, I'm
no,
sorry,
that's
that's on the
that's
south.
the south side.
Yeah,
I
sorry.
think if you go back here and I enlarge this, we should
Okay.
be able to see that.
So that's going to show you kind of the ground floor lobby and how we try to include a two-story volume, a lot of glass, emphasizing that corner by recessing the portion of the building where the parking entrance is, and really highlighting the lobby in that facade. Then, Adam, I should have a rendering facing the shared use path where we can maybe look at
But it
that.
also said that, right, where that,
Yeah,
where
where
there's
the-
now, with that moved over.
Sorry.
On the far right there. That said, there's a gallery and a fitness center and the bike room, so that will be transparent glass looking into those.
Correct, and I wanted to see if we could turn the corner because we're gonna actually have access to those.
Can they see into the mailroom also, or is that walled off completely from the gallery?
So it's not currently walled off. There are some end partitions to it where we're hoping to mount the artwork and benches, creating the gallery space along the window.
But you could see into where the mail area is?
Correct. You would be able to see activity in between those areas
Great.
of notion.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's, because people are always walking around in the mailroom, so it's a good way to activate things. Great.
And let me see if I can find that other.
I'm gonna scroll down, I think you have some renderings at the end.
Yeah,
I
that'd be
believe,
great.
So
Thanks.
let me just check. We have some elevations there, but I think the rendering may be
Do a better
more
job, yeah.
illustrative. There's one that's up close.
Unfortunately, I'm not seeing page numbers, that's our mistake. I see where I want to be, yeah, I think that's where I wanted to be, is like right there.
That looks like the back.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
back.
one
Yeah, I keep
before.
getting confused with
One
that.
more, sorry.
Go back. That's.
Here we go, yes.
Okay.
Thank you,
There's
guys.
the office
Sorry.
building.
That's our mistake for not numbering our pages. So if you look over,
Okay, good, yeah.
you
you
can kind of
it.
see around
Okay,
that corner.
and the
So there's
sidewalk is
glass
close
there.
to that then?
Right. And then the second to the last page, we have kind of an evening rendering that's even close up to that up front.
What's the issue that we're sort of addressing right now?
Ground level uses.
Okay.
So
yeah,
you can
whatever
see the
the-
transparency along that entire.
So what I'm trying to find is, are those uses sufficiently active? Or what is the main road? That's where my question is.
Can I add to that the staff's sort of three concerns, which were the location of the garage entry, the lobby proximity to Metro, and the loading dock on the sort of more residential side, which I think have ground floor uses as we're talking about. So I know that on the presentations, we had the garage entry. Staff pointed out that it's sort of on the way as you're going to Metro. And so I just wanted to hear, are you the architect? No? Okay. We don't have the architect in the house?
We have the architect virtually.
So I was just wondering if we could sort of cover a little bit some of the, preferred approach to the entrance
Sure.
on the side versus the other side. What are the pros and cons?
Right, so
And just walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. So we've looked at the parking garage entrance, and we've looked at, the idea that staff asked about, can you move it, central to where that intersection is? And we can certainly get into more detail with staff. We haven't had a chance to kind of show them the details. But we believe it does harm not only to that ground floor frontage, because it effectively breaks off the western 2,700 square feet of amenity space from the remainder of that ground floor use, because you would have kind of where that oval is in the middle of the building, you would have a parking garage going down. We would lose parking on the first floor of the garage, a significant amount of parking, if we were to have to move the loading along that frontage and below grade as well. And we've done some research. We're kind of questioning why staff is recommending that we put the loading below grade. We've looked at 12 site plan projects since January of 2021. And the only project that has done below grade parking and loading, or below grade loading, is Penn Place, which is 3 million square feet of a bunch of different uses. Every other project has, I believe that I looked at, and I'd have to go back and look at my list, is typically mixed use with some retail engaged. And all of those projects have at-grade loading. And of course, we see that a lot, and we usually treat it by making sure that we're paying attention to that loading dock door and making sure we treat it architecturally. It has to go somewhere, but we believe that the loading cannot go below grade because of the damage it will do to the rest of the building and our ability to provide the required parking. As to that parking entrance, as I mentioned, it would kind of cut right through the middle of that first floor. And there are some impacts that would also have on the first floor of the parking, even if you didn't put the loading there. We actually believe that having the parking to the east and recessing it, right? We felt it was important from an architectural standpoint to pull that corner back to de-emphasize the parking entrance. But regardless of whether we move that parking entrance or not, we still need the lay-by for fire access. So staff had also recommended in our prior meeting that if we can't move the parking entrance, could we look at a couple of things? Could we look at narrowing the curb cut to the east, coming out of that parking garage, which we have done? They said, could you look at making that right out only? So you only have one way of traffic movement, which we have also done. Now in our plans, we showed markings that showed right out only. If it was desirable, we can look at signage. We can look at channeling that back.
Sorry, you're like fire hosing me here with a lot
Oh,
of
I'm sorry.
information. So like, okay, so you talked about the loading dock underground, you talked about the parking, and you talked about the orientation. So if we can just break that down, you're just
Sure.
going really fast. And
I'm
you're
sorry.
just throwing a lot of information. I'm having a hard time keeping up.
Okay.
So let's just stick with the entrance to the garage
Okay.
and the location with the entrance to the building, right? And creating a situation where the entrance to the building is on the other side of the traffic. So did you look at that?
Yes.
Okay, so, and even let's say if we flip the building symmetrically, right? Like if we just inverted the other way, did you look at that possibility of putting the entrance on the other corner?
No, because number one, we weren't asked to do that, but two, we think that that would be a worse condition to have that parking entrance where we have our amenity space running on that shared use path, and going back to the idea that we have to have the lay-by in front of the building for fire access. That lay-by, as we've designed it now, has been designed in consultation with the fire chief or the fire marshal as to what they need for access to the building.
All right, so catch me up on that. I'm not following how the driveway would interfere with the lay-by.
Because I thought you were asking me, could I move the parking entrance to the corner where I now have the dog area and the.
Correct.
Okay, so if I do that, cars are gonna come in and out of that garage and they're just you're just saying traverse back over the same area?
Yeah.
No, we did not look at that. We'd have to go back and look at that as it relates to kind of grading and the architecture, the grading of the site. But also, we did not think it was a good idea to put a parking garage entrance next to that shared use path. We thought it was better to put amenities and ground floor units adjacent to that path. Because if I moved my parking entrance there, it's just going to have a ripple effect in terms of like what I need to do to get down below. So the reason we put it on the east side is because you can put it below grade and kind of take that dive and treat that eastern side of the building, which is facing the office building, and you don't kind of lose anything. If I flip it, as you're suggesting, I'd have to go back and technically look at what the impact would be. But my guess would be not only would I lose amenity space, I would lose some of those ground floor units that are activating that shared use path and have ground floor entries toward that path.
Right, yes, I think that's a good point, but it's a little bit of pick your poison here, right? I think staff is trying to say that the orientation towards the pedestrian, orienting towards Metro is a significant amenity, right? So to put the parking garage entrance on the other side, right, would take away from that amenity over there. And I do think you're right that we would sacrifice some of the walk-up units, put the ramp on there. Because on the plan, it looks like there's like 1 bedrooms, and I think those open onto an internal hallway, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the proximity to the site is really tight on the sort of right of the right. So I think we couldn't repeat walk up or walk in sidewalk on that edge of the property, right?
Exactly.
And that's just because we've moved the building that way to allow more space with the
Shared use path.
shared use path and the other units. Okay.
And so, but to your point, we understand that staff has concerns about pedestrians as they're leaving the site and heading towards Metro, right? And so we did talk about differentiated treatment for the lay-by area, drop-off, pickup, whatever. And we think that we probably could do a better job of designing that space to prioritize pedestrians just in order of magnitude in terms of kind of the peak hour trips that are coming to that main building. In the AM, we have 13 in and 66 out. In the PM, we have 45 in and 20 out. And of those outbound trips, we think that 49 in the morning, so 49 of 66 are going to be headed east. And in the evening, 15 out of 20 are going to be headed east. So that's why we thought it made sense to make that eastern curb cut right out only. Do improvements that we can look at through that shared use drive to really prioritize pedestrians and make sure that our vehicles are slowing down. And we actually think having the vehicles kind of come out of the garage and to the signalized intersection actually slows those cars down, whether they're coming in or going out. They're just not shooting into the garage straight across that space there.
Okay, so that's what you mean by the right only, because that way it slows down traffic and it makes it.
If you're sort of getting into transportation, actually,
Yeah.
should be the next.
No, I'm sorry, I
area,
meant at the
SPRC.
intersection.
Okay,
At the intersection, having to come in at the intersection in turn, but we can hold off on that.
Yeah, because
yeah, good point.
So,
that'll be a discussion then, but you definitely put on notice that this is going to be a pretty serious discussion, because another issue is whether isn't there a raised median on Fairfax Drive at that point? If this in front of the where the building would go from the Holiday Inn right now?
I don't, it's not raised, I think
There's a
it's a
break in
break,
it
but
right
not.
There's a
Yeah.
break where the hotel
could be
entrance
extended.
is, but
As part of this
there is
project.
still, because you're cutting like multiple ways, cuts in that median, which again, that's a discussion for the next one. Just flagging that as how many cuts is VDOT going to allow you to put? in Fairfax
You
Drive?
can, you
No,
can,
you
cur-
can
you
currently,
can currently, if you're westbound, you can make a left turn into all the existing, which pretty much cover that.
There are a bunch of, yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, but we'll go for the next one. Can I let Commissioner Slatt talk, because his hand's been up for a while. Commissioner Slatt?
Thanks. Yeah, I have a couple things to throw in, I think, on the discussion that just happened. And then my original question was a different ground floor use question. But yeah, I find the applicants kind of thinking about a lot of this compelling. I think I certainly would not ask for loading to be moved underground in a site this size. And I think there are some reasonable reasons to have the garage entrance on the east side. For me, the biggest issue is that it just feels like super weird and indirect as a pedestrian to try and get to that front door from the sidewalk on Fairfax Drive. So I would really love to see, maybe like a raised crossing across the lay-by with, some differentiated pavement. Just make like kind of a really clear approach to that front door and kind of emphasize that front door a little more, maybe architecturally. I think would go like a long way to kind of improving that. How does that pedestrian circulation work coming in from Fairfax Drive? My ground floor uses question is actually about the bike room. Am I seeing correctly that the bike room is in fact 2 stories tall?
Yeah.
And what is that stairs or a ramp between the 2 levels of the bike room?
I believe it's
Oh.
both.
Both. All right. I look forward to maybe getting in there and seeing that at some point. That would be great. But yeah, okay, great. I appreciate the response. Thanks.
Yeah, for next time, could you bring some more detailed drawings of that?
Sure.
I appreciate it. For top transportation. And one follow-up, did you happen to, parking access, once again, did you take a look at working with the Regent office building and tying into their existing service drive rather than having another sort of crossing? Because there's another crossing for their service drive just 20 feet east. I don't know if you reached out to them, could reach out to them, see if that's a. We already have a lot of these service drives that have very little utilization. You might as well try to have less pavement.
Yeah, I just want to note that in terms of the lobby or lay-by design, that right now the front entrance is right on top of what I perceive to be a fairly significant tree. Looks like you're going to cut it down to put your front door. you are doing a redesign of that, I'd ask that you just look at preserving a tree.
And I have one more comment on ground floor uses. Am I correct that on the big building, there are external entrances for all the units on the first level, on the shared use path?
Correct.
And also just south of the, where the driveway entrance is? Is there a couple on there, or?
There are, I was going to say not 100%, but
No, just
there
a
are
couple.
some, yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then the south ones, those also have outside entrances.
So you'll see on the south, you'll see there are a couple of.
Sorry, guys, let me just share this really fast. Gladly, yeah. Let me go west side or south side?
South. On the west, they all have entrances, I believe, except for maybe the first one at the top,
Yeah.
next to the bike room. That does not have direct access,
Okay.
but all the others do. And then when you come to the south, you'll see that the ones to the right do. And it's a little bit, kind of, we have a, yeah, those.
Are they stoops or universal access? Or mix?
Yeah.
Mix, okay.
Yeah, because I was noticing there's steps on the inside off the interior corridor. So I assume they have to be universal on the outside if they. If you see that one bedroom at the top, there's steps. You actually are different
Yes,
elevation.
right.
So you have to use steps to get to the internal corridor. So you have to be, assume, universal at the exterior door. Is there a reason why that was done?
So maybe we should look at the elevation, because I think that helps you understand maybe a little what's going on in that southern elevation. Or keep coming, it'll be the third sheet, I think. At the bottom.
Here we go, this is it.
And at the bottom, that's the previous.
Oh,
There you
sorry.
go, there's the current. That shows you a little bit kind of how the grade is going in that area. And so we have the walkouts kind of on the east side of the building, and then we have garage intake, and then the loading.
Can I ask a follow-up to that question? I kind of looked at the elevations myself, and it looks like some of it is elevated a little bit, but maybe a lot of it is maybe at ground level. Are you worried about the 500-year floodplain? The whole property is in a 500-year floodplain. And I just would have assumed you would have tried to elevate the whole thing a bit. If you don't, it's great for the downstream residents because the water all just run into the building and it'll slow it down.
What was that? What are you talking? Oh, sorry, that just threw me. I guess I don't have I know that we have our engineer looking at stormwater and stormwater management. I know that's a topic for next time, so I'll take that back.
I knew you'd say that. It is a topic for next time, but it does affect the external use, that ground floor use, depending on what the.
Right. I mean, I think we're comfortable with the stormwater management. I just don't want to kind of delve into the specifics of that. But we do have an engineer on the team, and we have looked at those types of items, so.
Yeah, I think there'll be a significant stormwater discussion.
Yeah.
Just because Lower Run is
Yeah.
like right under there. And it's a big pipe. Yeah. Other questions on ground floor uses? Okay, move on to site circulation. Any questions on that? Any questions, any comments?
And I'm sorry, I probably just have a bad memory. Can you relay the topics? I've got some questions and I'm not sure.
Sure, the three topics today are ground level uses and orientation.
Yeah.
Site circulation.
Yeah.
And then building massing and architecture, how it looks.
I've got a couple questions that are going to relate to some of the external. It's not flooding related. It's not.
That sounds like architecture and massing.
Okay. Then maybe I'll ask them.
Okay.
At that time. Yeah.
Site circulation is basically how we get around it. The one question I have about the path down the middle, the bike path, walking, is it one or are there two paths there? One for pedestrians, one for bikes, or is it being shared?
It's shared.
It's shared, okay. And how
And then
wide?
adjacent to the triplexes, there are lead paths and a sidewalk on that.
Okay, now, is that path going to be fenced off, that it would just be the triplex residents using it, or could it be anybody?
No, we're not proposing a fence.
Okay, and I understand the triplexes are going to be condominiums. Where does the property line end the condos? Does that include that sidewalk there? Is that private, or is that going to have an easement, public easement on it? Because you have the two, you have the bike path there, and they have that path along the condos.
Can I be prepared to answer that next time?
Sure,
I want to
but-
go back and look at the
Yeah,
property.
look at that,
lines.
because then you'll definitely want to know that.
Yep.
Because I could see that if the bike path gets heavy use, which we hope it does, people may want to be using that sidewalk just so they're not worrying about getting run over by a scooter or a bike.
Okay.
I think the preference would be that be public sidewalk, even if it's privately owned.
Got it. Sorry.
It's a 12-foot shared.
Okay, the path is 12 feet. And how wide is the sidewalk? That looks like it'd be about 4 feet.
I
3,
think
4
so,
feet.
yeah.
4 to 6.
46, that's generous.
I think it's 4. Yeah. 4?
Maybe I need more questions while I get confirmed.
Okay.
Mr. Slab.
Yeah, Chris.
Thank you. I just have a question about, oh, no, I lost where I had my, yes. North Wakefield Street, this new sidewalk on the east end of the new residential. Can you tell me, does that sidewalk, like, if I'm coming out of my new units there onto that sidewalk that runs along the south end of the property line, does that sidewalk connect me like to Wakefield? Like, can I easily like cross Wakefield there?
Yeah, when you say connect you to Waco, we do show a crosswalk. Am I misunderstanding?
So that's like going up north, right?
Yeah.
That's like a north-south crosswalk, right? The one you're talking about?
Correct.
Yeah, so I'm talking about if, I've got a neighbor who lives over there on the east side of Wakefield, in the,
So
existing
you want a
stuff
crosswalk
there.
like across Wakefield at that point?
I feel like I do, or at least, it's going to be a real quiet street. Like, I'm not convinced a crosswalk is required. But I would at least like, a curb cut to, and, not have to tromp across some grass, in order to get over there.
I see what you're
to
saying.
get to that other side of the street.
If I'm at building 4, kind of, if I've come down the sidewalk adjacent to building 4, how am I crossing over Wakefield?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
So Commissioner Slide, you're saying essentially you think there's going to be a desire line there regardless of what they do, so let's accommodate it?
Yeah, exactly. I think there are going to be people who are going to want to walk down that other side of Wakefield Street, or take that back sidewalk that connects you over to Glebe. And
not
they're not
necessarily
they're not gonna-
a crosswalk you said, but just looking at how do we treat getting from the sidewalk across the street, whether there's a curb cut there or something to make that.
Yeah, I just want to flag it because I think it's something people are going to want to do. So
Okay.
let's make it safe and possible, and make them not have to tromp through grass or whatever. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Sidewalk.
Yeah, are you proposing to widen the road at all on the western side, building 3? Yeah, or is it gonna, there is an existing road there, right? On the western side, yeah, behind building 2, I guess, and 3.
Yeah, that geometry changes. That's not.
I believe that's just the entrance to the parking lot. lot.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
back
Oh,
there, right?
well,
Yeah.
Parking garage.
Yeah,
And I,
garage, thank you, yeah.
So is that new? I don't know the site that well.
the asphalt would not, I mean, we would be replacing what is currently asphalt with the
Right.
alley here.
Right, and would the alley be wider than the current asphalt? No?
I would have to confirm, but I don't believe
I don't think
so.
so. I don't think so. It'd be a similar condition or actually narrower.
There shouldn't be. There's a lot of curb
It's
cuts
a,
in front of that.
and
whole
it's a
area.
lot of,
It's a lot of wide curb cuts. I like that a lot. It's like.
Okay.
a lot.
on the western.
I mean, just that whole quality inside.
Right, yeah.
Right.
But the entire site right now is pretty much paved. So it would be that different feel along that western edge, except that it will feel more like an alley since there will be a building, two buildings.
Well, let me just go ahead and follow up. I have some concerns that you're not preserving a lot of the trees in the conservation area. And I know we're going to be talking about landscaping next time. However, if you're really not changing the alleyway that much, I don't know why you can't preserve more trees.
Well, because there's grading that needs to occur, but we'll be prepared to discuss that.
Okay.
And we'll be able to then also be prepared to identify where all those low-grade utilities are, the big stormwater pipe.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's also power lines under there. I think the location of all of those, and if there's any vaults, they're going to be moved, or if they're staying, where those are all going to be located, because there's so much going on.
Yeah.
There's so much going on under there that we have to understand how that's going to work in relation to what we're going to be putting, how we landscape and pave and pathways, what's doable, what's not because of that. Commissioner Softball,
Yeah.
then.
Let me just follow up on that, Jim. It looks to me from looking at the 4.1 schematics that there are a lot of easements associated with the entrance of the alleyway there. Have you scoped that all out? You think it's doable?
We're reviewing all of that right now. Yep.
Okay.
I'd just like to put some the tree concern on the western edge, because we've got neighbors there that have brought up, I think we maybe talked about it here, even. They've got a buffer now. We'd like to see that buffer.
Yeah, that will be a big topic at the next SPRC, absolutely. Yeah, that comes up, I think, at every meeting. No, and legitimately so. It's
Right.
Definitely a topic.
I had a question. I think last time we spoke about the, I'm not totally clear, maybe Adam, you can help me. It's the bike connection, and I think it's at Woodrow. Was there a concern there or something, if I recall correctly?
I think one thing we want to explore further with the applicant is how this multi-use path terminates sort of into Woodrow or this intersection here. And I think our traffic operations engineering folks want to sit down and have a little more detailed conversation about not just like how we treat this, but wayfinding and materials and stop control. And is there a better way to sort of have that path maybe connect you to a ramp to cross to a sidewalk to the south? And then sort of the ultimate goal here, of course, being to connect down, if you're headed southbound, to connect down to Wilson Boulevard. So I think it's just, I put it out there because, again, the whole point is just to get your guys' feedback about what you think about it. We are going to just take a closer look at, there's no major issue here. It's just
What we're
more like.
looking at is kind of optimizing the connection, how it
Yeah.
terminates and
And the
connects,
trail.
but also minimizing any potential vehicular or bicycle pet conflicts that could arise at an intersection, kind of anywhere, but specifically this.
And I think the way we have it designed is as a four-way stop, which we thought was the best way to ensure safety. But of course, I mean, we're happy to discuss that with staff to figure out if there's some better ways to do things. Just for context on that intersection, we're looking at 5 peak hour vehicle trips. So you're talking one vehicle every 12 minutes coming or going and less throughout the day. But we're certainly, I mean, open to figuring out what the best way to do it is and signage.
And I think some of the like pavement differentiation that Kathy mentioned earlier for like the lay-by, we could potentially use some similar treatments down here, again, to kind of give the feel for a more pedestrian and bike
Yeah, and I think some of the things that are illustrated in this presentation may not actually yet be in the 4.1 plan or the landscape plan, for instance. So, this is an evolving conversation, but that was kind of just what we were raising it.
This is circulation. And I'll get to you. Currently, can you drive between Woodrow and Wakefield without going into the garage? Are they effectively dead ends but for the garage?
No, there's a street that.
There is a street?
Exist?
Not
existing.
existing, you mean this proposed.
No.
Oh, no, today.
No.
No, I believe they're both dead.
They're both dead ends, okay. So we are adding a connection, which is usually good for circulation. But we have to be aware of that, what the implications are, to make sure that it doesn't read as, let's zoom through here. So if you were having treatments for that intersection, that would make you feel, slow down, this is what's going on here, I'm not sure this goes through. That would be good, I think, because we're not trying to encourage through traffic. So it's a design question. Again, I'm not disputing, keep it, it's great to have the connection again, but design it the right way, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I have a comment from Slatt.
Okay, Commissioner Slatt, and then.
Thanks. Just wanted to throw in my 2 cents on this, where the trail comes out here, and say I think it's a very reasonable treatment as it is. 4-way stop, is going to be, especially with that low volume of cars, is going to be, I think, totally fine. I wish it weren't right where the road does this weird kind of jog. If there were anything that could be done to have it not happening at this weird jog, that would be great, but that may be too a little too much to ask given everything else that's been going on. And just reiterate, as you are thinking about potential changes to how this meets here, that I will strongly again suggest that the majority of through bikes are not going to be going down Woodrow. They're going to be going over to Wakefield, because that's what has the traffic signal at Wilson Boulevard. So just something to keep in mind. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, the bike path, it's a great community amenity. Thank you. Could not come up with that word. 2 questions about that. One, how is it going to be policed? Does the county somehow take responsibility? In other words, can they say, like right now you can't ride a motorized vehicle on trails, but could you ride a motorized vehicle through this trail, for example, since it's public property? That's one question.
Well, we're seeking a public access easement over.
Oh, okay.
So
Didn't know
it
that.
would, yes.
Okay.
And then in terms of this new road, I mean, that also would have public access.
Okay.
Because it's the fire.
Okay. And I think you just answered my second question was, could this amenity be somehow amended out 6 months from now? And it won't be because you're going to use it.
Darn.
Yeah,
Cool. Huh?
the bike and pedestrian path along Fairfax, that's a shared path?
Yes, and we made some improvements to that path. There were comments about that at the last SPRC to make it more direct, to make it wider, to make it more clear that it's a shared use path, to look at potential landscaping. Once again, we'll talk about this next month with the exhibits, with the existing constraints. We've done the best we can. We've widened that. It's a straight path. It's 12 feet wide, but we still have the condition where we are not able to put trees on the outside edge, but we do have some space between the curb and that path. And then I think we also talked about signage potentially that would kind of be at the terminus as you hit Fairfax Drive.
You're going to have a bench sitting out there?
I don't know that we've shown that. I'd have to go back and look at that. We can talk about that at landscape.
I want to point out here so people can understand, because we're talking about site circulation right now. If you shrink that down so we can see more of it. Yeah, buildings 2 and 3 have that driveway to the west of them, to the left of them. That's the driveway to the garage. The garages for each of those buildings. Understand that going up toward Fairfax Drive, there is not a connection for those cars to get to Fairfax Drive. That driveway is effectively a dead end. The only way out is onto is it Woodrow. No, it's
Warwick.
Hmm?
Woodrow Warwick.
Yeah,
Yeah. So when it looks at the top there, like there's a connection that's for the fire department. It's not a through connection at all. So make sure everybody understands that for the site circulation here. But people can walk through it, bikes could go through it presumably. But it's not for the average car.
Yeah, and we have worked with fire department to, I think, make that curb cut harder for vehicles. I think that was one of our latest comments, to make sure that, you know, someone doesn't even think that it's in a vehicle.
Good.
yeah. We're looking at putting like additional security through there to make
Like
it very clear,
physical
like physical barriers.
Barriers.
Not to prevent a pet or a cyclist, but
Yeah,
that's
good.
unauthorized to go through there.
Good, because otherwise
And
it
if
would
we
end up
sign
being a
it,
cut
if
through.
we sign it, police can enforce
Right.
it. They'll put up a sign that's.
Okay, good. Well, anyway, just want to make sure people understood that's what that means up in that corner there. Is there a reason why the garage entrance doesn't have a jog so it takes advantage of the signalized intersection with Fairfax?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Are you, okay, when you come out of that garage,
Mhm.
do you have to go to the left and then right to get onto Fairfax Drive?
If you're going westbound,
But eastbound, you can go straight ahead and make the right.
correct,
Okay, so we are taking advantage of that signalized intersection.
correct.
Good.
And if you're coming into the site, you have to.
Okay, no, that's good. That makes sense. I like that. Any other questions, comments about site circulation? Okay, let's move on to architecture and massing. I guess we can start calling up some of those pictures. Sure. You know, I have one question. The building is like a Dallas Dome, just goes all the way around. Those interior units, you do the floor plan there, some of those corner ones, they don't even have a window they have a window that just looks out on another wall. Yeah, upstairs, not that level. Those are actually going to be profitable?
Someone will want those.
Jeez, I mean, it's like old New York tenements, with an air shaft in the middle. I mean, that's just amazing. Yeah, that's market, so it's your call.
In a hotel, you would call that courtyard.
No, some of them, you can't even see the courtyard.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, at the upper level, because that's the ground level. There's units that go up that have these very, I mean, it's really basically an air shaft. Yeah, that's your call to get to market. Okay, any questions on the massing, the architecture? I noticed on the triplexes, it actually looks pretty nice. You have, the downspouts are very visible and show, so it's a feature. Again, I'm not fighting that, I think actually looks interesting. Do those go right into the ground, or do they just spill out onto the, do they connect up to some sort of stormwater
We have some fire retention.
boxes?
Oh,
Okay,
Fire retention boxes at the front of the triplexes, that I believe is the area that you're speaking about. And so-
yeah, you can see the downspouts right there.
Yeah, and if you zoom in, I think you might.
I like the way that looks personally, but I just want to make sure the water goes somewhere. It's not just bees flowing out. You first, and then.
Sure, I got two questions. We can alternate, whatever makes sense. This was a question that we raised last time, and you guys were going to look into it. And it's a
I
question.
hope I did.
I hope so.
That's always dangerous.
It was a question on the treatment of the common boundary at the southern edge. Because there's a common, taking one of the property, or one of the homes is going to be taken down, I believe. And there's a brick wall or brick fence along one of the southern boundaries. And the question was what was going to happen with that? Was that going to be retained or improved or what?
I'm not sure that our 4.1, so if I can just, we can get with the design team afterward and let you know personally. We'll let you know.
That'd be great. And then the second.
I want to make sure I understand the question though. Where exactly?
Is that west of Woodrow?
Right there?
That you're talking about?
It's
to the
well,
west, the little area.
They're also in the other locations as well.
yeah, I think we need to look at both properties on both the Wakefield and the Woodruff side. I don't know for certain if both properties have the same concern. But it is on the southern edge, because I think where that southern building is right there, or whatever you're calling that.
Yep.
There were homes there you're taking down. And
Right.
there were shared fencing between those old homes that. So the question is, how will that fencing be handled? Sure, if it was approved, that would. And then second question, sort of along the same lines. On the southwestern corner, there is currently a brick or cement wall that prevents access from the county-owned green space that goes all the way down to Wilson. Will that wall be removed to allow access to tenants or others, other citizens, or is that going to be retained?
This area?
It's probably, yeah, it's probably exactly right in there, yeah. It would be, I can't speak for everybody, but that green space, it's a green belt, basically. Really what it is it's the top of the big pipe that we're talking about. To provide access.
Sorry, I'm trying to get to the land. I don't see that.
Yeah, it's going to be right in there somewhere, but
Yeah.
it's probably.
And over here, we're replacing, there's no fence.
Is there anything on the slides that Mr. Wilson has that you could throw up that you're talking about?
I'm looking at the application itself.
It's in the 4.1 plans, and from what I can tell from the landscaping, as it relates to the triplexes on the east, we're going to have new landscape treatment that includes planting beds, fire retention. I don't see a fence.
Okay, well, we'll get into it
Street
because
trees.
that's landscaping, which is the
Right.
next one. So
And then similarly on the west side, I don't see
Okay.
that wall, but we'll come back with
yeah,
this in the
definitely, because
landscape
that will be a
discussion.
topic at the next one.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay, let me kick up a little bit on architecture and I get to Mr. Cook. The triplexes, I think, actually look quite nice. Haven't seen anything that's quite like that in Arlington, so very interested to see how they look when they're for real. But right now, I think that they're good. I like that. The big building itself, it's a big building. I don't see anything special about it. It's just a big building, and the architecture isn't offensive, but in my taste, it's just sort of, you've done a certain amount of brick.
You do like the downspouts.
I like the down, but that's on the triplex. That's on the triplex.
That's right.
I like the triplex. Those are great. I think you did a nice job on them. Yeah, this you broke up the massing. We wanted that. That's good. I like that. You have a little bit of, bottom, middle, and top in the center there. I think that's good also. It does read like a residential building. Fine with that. Okay. You're identifying where the front entrance is, which is good. I've seen too many buildings in Arlington that you don't know where the lobby is, at least from the outside. So, okay, so I think these are all improvements, or they are good with it. It's just that this is the type of building I just can't get excited about. So, but that's my own personal taste. Cook,
Yeah, it's sort of following up on that is the materials. There is a lot of hardy plank, both all of these facilities. I'm not used to seeing hardy plank on 5/1 or whatever we call these construction. We've traditionally asked for brick, at least brick veneer at a minimum. Have accent pieces. In the past, we've had, or some sort of something of substance, a masonry of something. And this is probably where I sort of, and on the condos or the triplexes, whatever we're calling them, those are almost entirely hardy board. Again, jury's still out on how they looked after 10, 20, 30 years. Again, in Boston, we have been always asked for brick, all four sides, except if, unless there's the backside is not visible by the public. You know, you look in North Boston, or just down the street here, we've always asked for masonry. You know, this just, I don't know, feels to me like it would be something great in like a Colorado mountain town or something. It just seems different. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm sort of stuck in the past, but it's definitely a departure from what we typically see for townhouses.
Done?
Yes.
So I'll piggyback on some of that. I think I have to agree that I think the materiality could be sort of revisited. I understand that sometimes you can't have like, you know, super timeless materials everywhere, but I think, let me start with the positive. So first of all, I think the diversity of the unit typology is really exciting, and I really commend the developer working with the triplexes, the multiple layouts, the unit over another unit. I encourage the architect and perhaps the developer to look at like a lot of the Dutch housing, or, you know, that whole area of Europe has really great housing that is really low scale, but, you know, really allows for a lot of exciting street entrance, you know, lobby entrance, and just different unit types. So thanks for doing that. I know it's a little bit risky, I think, in this market. So I encourage you to do that. I will echo the materiality thing I think I already mentioned. I think, let's see. So on the site plan, see what you're doing. I think I agree with it, but I would love to have a little bit of a conversation about that. So usually what we try to do is we try to make buildings face towards the street, right? And put the garage and all that in the back. We don't want to create another alley, right? Because that would take away from the building and of course create impervious surfaces. But you know, it's just, I think I agree with the design, but it just, it rubs me a little bit the wrong way just because of the way it is. So it's not so much a criticism as it is just like a note. You know, I think it's interesting that that back of house needs to be treated almost as the front of house, and the front of house needs to be treated as front of house. I don't know how much people are actually going to use their front door. They're probably going to go through the garage a lot more. So there's a little bit of that sort of lapse on the urban design factor that I don't know if we can do anything about it. And I agree that this is ultimately, I think, the best solution, but if you could sort of perhaps talk to that next time. I would encourage, I echo Commissioner Lantelmi's sort of feeling about the building, although I think it's significantly improved, and I commend you and the team for sort of listening to what we said and has brought the building to a much better place. It can continue to improve. I think one of the things that we're trying to encourage is this bird friendliness aspect. And I think by minimizing, well, there's two advantages to cutting back on the percentage of glass on the building if you can do it. One of them is, of course, the environmental energy requirement. Glass is inevitably less. I assume you're not using triple glazing. And even then, it still would be less than an insulated wall. And then, of course, less glass means less opportunity for birds to hit, you know, that surface, which they tend to get confused by glass when the light's on. And so that would be my two sort of requests or you know, things to look at. Perhaps reducing the number of window units, emphasizing opaque faces. And
And then I think, yeah, thanks for the units. I think the diversity of the units is really exciting and something that Arlington County can really use.
Yeah, kind of following up on that in a little bit more detail in terms of understanding better how you're using building orientation as well as material selection. You mentioned the size of the window, types of windows, in order to maximize energy efficiency for the building as you get started, where you have to start dealing with, you know, the heat and hot water systems. You know, kind of looking at that much more. And the other thing with respect to that in terms of materials, or how you're selecting materials that are lower in carbon.
Commissioner Sacco?
Just to piggyback on what Commissioner Sarli was saying, this is a building is an improvement over, but it very definitely is sort of a square building that faces out on Fairfax Drive, and because this is the main entrance to Fairfax Drive, which is becoming a major Arlington street, I would ask that you just take a look at whether you can do something to orient toward that entrance. From, you know, people are coming in from the west along Fairfax Drive. This is where they're coming up. And you also have the conjunction with the bike path and the pedestrian sidewalk too. So you've got kind of a dynamic intersection here. But because the building is so square and so definitely faces on Fairfax Drive, there are no architectural details to sort of deal with that. I think a very favorable placement for maybe a more dramatic treatment or some detail that looks to the west. So I would encourage you to take a look at that.
Other questions, comments on architecture? Passing? Nothing? Okay. That really covers what we need to talk about. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go around and ask everybody for final comments. Why don't we start clockwise? You're first up.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, nothing, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Feaster.
I live near this site, and it strikes me that if I were to live in one of those units, I would be inclined to use the access to Woodrow frequently. I will be surprised if you don't find a more pedestrian and bike access through your neighborhood to Wilson Boulevard from there. There's a nice restaurant there on Wilson, right where it goes for one reason. But strikes me that would be, I think you'll find more usage that way.
Commissioner Bagley?
For the next meeting, addressing biophilia, I mean, I know that there's a natural setting there, but possibly more could be done with biophilia to warm up the front of the place, because it is very boxy and square. And it is across the street from balsam wetlands. I've seen hawks in there, I mean, you know, some deer in there, so. And also, when you come back with the discussion the next time, if you could have some idea of, you know, what native things or what trees or whatever, and to Mr. Stockwell's thing, also preserving why we cannot, or to look at preserving especially the bigger trees.
Commissioner Sarli?
I'd like to express my gratitude again for the design team and the developer to sort of listening to us and doing it again. I think now that someone mentioned that this is a mining town, I can't unsee that. I apologize. So now it's like, yeah, you're right. It does look like a mining town house. The one question that I had, I think this is another comment for perhaps the architect. I noticed that the windows are double hung, and those are less efficient than casement windows because of they tend to leak more. So, you know, again, it's one of those things that perhaps it's not a big deal, and if we could switch to casements or different type of more operable window, it probably would be better for the ceiling and environmental impact. But other than that, thanks again. I'm super excited about this as much as I can be with this typology, which I agree with Commissioner Molintelli, but you know, it's good to see improvement. So that's the part that I get excited about. Thank you.
Mr. Cook?
Yeah, again, thank you for these changes. really appreciate the applicant coming in and basically doing a do-over and coming back with a much better plan. I think that's why we had so few comments today. I think a lot of our comments are going to be in transportation and landscaping next time. But I already mentioned the bike room, where I'd like sort of a detailed blow up of that next time. The roof, to me, it looked like it's just a regular standard roof. Are we like to, is it going to be any kind of green treatment, or is there opportunities for solar? Look into that. And landscaping, again, for next time, especially on building 4, that faces the new street. It doesn't look good right now. So appreciate looking at that, but thank you.
Commissioner Sacco?
Like the changes that you've made. The thing that I really would like you to flesh out next time is how you're taking advantage of the green building program. The only information we have so far is that you're 0.25 kick in density because you're involved in the lead, but I don't see any other details. I mean, absolutely none. So I would ask that you flesh that out and tell us what you're doing there, including the treatment of the green roof, if there is one.
Commissioner McIntyre?
Yeah, kind of actually building on that, we would actually like a fairly detailed discussion on terms of sustainability and balance, and actually going beyond just what's in the green building incentive policy to focus on maximizing energy efficiency throughout the building, and also using electric systems as opposed to fossil gas systems at the start out in order to get to a real carbon neutral. We find it very helpful for developers actually to do a zero carbon assessment so that gives them a lot of sense of what the pathway is. We'd also want to get more information in terms of EV charging infrastructure and where you would be looking at, and whether, especially EV ready, as well as, if you can't do all electric, which is really the way to start, is have the electric ready so that, because, we have to stop burning fossil fuels. So that's going to be kind of what we want to hear a lot more about in terms of getting to, above and beyond what's in the minimum green building standards and build something that's built with the climate crisis.
Yeah, I acknowledge this is a better plan. I think that, as mentioned, it's because there's so much less discussion that recognizes that this is definitely a much improved plan from the last go around. I do want to agree with the comments of Mr. Cook. A roof is a terrible thing to waste. So, what are we going to be doing with that? Another thing which I noted is missing, but we do need to raise is what will you be doing for affordable housing on this? How much, what sizes, that sort of thing. And I know often that doesn't get decided until very, very late, but at least ideas or what direction you're going in, that sort of thing, because we will want to know that. I think that really needs to be added to the agenda. Affordable housing, it's not on there.
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, that should have just been
Community benefits, that's missing, that's one of the big things.
We will edit that.
So yeah, so that will be also added, and that'll be part of the discussion. I do want to know that more of the connection to that county property at the far southwest corner. I think that's a really good call that you're making there. That could be something interesting there. So let's find out how that's going to all work. Otherwise, I think you've given people at the table have given you a number of things to look forward to answer at the next SPRC. Public comment. Do we have anybody? Oh, I forgot. Online, Commissioner Slatt, do you have anything to say to wrap up with?
Yes, thank you so much. I do want to say I really appreciate, again, the applicant's effort reworking this plan. Just wanted to say I'm a big fan of the trail design and the eyes on the trail. I love having the units with direct entrances on the trail, having the active amenity spaces that are adjacent. I think that's awesome. I really would love to see some more work on making like a really great pedestrian experience for those walking up to the main entrance to the big building from the Fairfax Drive sidewalk, making it not feel like they have to walk around the lay-by or cross, what feels right now, I think, like a car space crossing the lay-by. I look forward to talking at the next meeting more about that Fairfax Drive sidewalk, which really functions as an extension of the Bluemont Junction Trail. And I look forward to talking about a bit more about the East-West Alley, which I really think should actually be a piece of public street, should be a piece of 9th Street. I think it's going to serve some transportation purposes and not just be kind of this, private back alley. I don't know, if I lived on Woodrow and I wanted to make a left onto Wilson Boulevard after this thing, I would probably go around down Wakefield so that I could turn left with a light. So I think it's got a real street purpose and it should feel like a street. And also always love to see the at-grade bike room with direct access to the outside and the trail. So I think this project is heading in a great direction and I look forward to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Riccio?
Yes, I agree with everyone. I really think the do-over was a great step in the right direction. Also a big fan of the bike room leading out to the street as well, area. Look forward to the next discussion about landscaping particularly. That's more of what I know about, but otherwise, thank you so much for having this.
Thank you. Do we have any public commenters?
Yes, we have two.
Two, okay.
So first would be Juan Win.
Is that online or?
Yeah, it's online.
Okay, online? Yeah.
Hi, this is Juan. Thank you so much for sharing the updated plans.
You have 3 minutes.
I'm a resident. Can you hear me?
Yeah, speak up a little bit louder, but yes, we can hear you. And we're going to get a time.
Okay. So I want to thank you all for sharing the updated plans. I am a resident on North Wakefield Street, and I love the addition of all the new grass and greenery. This is somewhat of a basic question, but I just want to make sure it gets covered. We have a lot of pets in this area, and we just want to make sure that there will be trash receptacles and doggy bags, placed throughout so that, people actually pick up their dog, pick up after their dog, because that happens if there's no trash or doggy bags placed around.
Okay, any other comments? Still there? Okay.
Bernie Byrne.
Yes, Mr. Byrne, go ahead. You're on.
Okay. Yes, the conceptual land plan sheets, conceptual landscape plan sheets in the submission do not contain any information about the species and locations of any shrubs, ground covers, and perennials that the site may contain. You need to submit this information before the SPRC considers a landscape plan at the next meeting. In general, the site will have too little green space and a very poor transportation plan. You need to correct these deficiencies. In 2016, the county issued its monarch pledge, which encourages planting of native species, including milkweed, on which monarch butterflies feed. To prevent the introduction of invasive species, all plants should be native to Northern Virginia. Plant common milkweed, Asclepias syriaca, in all open spaces, including the streetscape, tree trenches, ledges, the roof in the north of the building, and the area near the shared use path. Common milkweed is the only species that grows well in Arlington's natural areas. Reproducing monarchs prefer to lay eggs on common milkweed. Plant few ornamental grass and sedges. These support relatively few pollinators, as they are wind pollinated. They can displace milkweeds and other important plants support pollinators. Now we're getting to the big point. Reduce the width of the so-called generous shared use path from 12 feet to 8 feet. The proposed path will actually receive little use now or in the future, as it will not directly connect to major streets or heavily used trails at both ends. Further, it is far better to separate pedestrians from cyclists than to have a shared use trail. That's specified in the transportation plan and everything. Most cyclists will use a straight and wide access road at the west end of the site to reach Woodrow and Wakefield streets. Therefore, place signage directing cyclists to the road and those streets at key locations. Plant cycling lanes on the access road if desired. Use the additional 4 feet for plantings of milkweed and other plants that support pollinators that are next to the shared use trail. That's what you do. You move the cyclists to the west side of the side on that access road. It's a straight shot, and that's what cyclists like to do. The paved path's impermeable surface will create stormwater runoff. If you
30 seconds.
retain- Okay, if you're retaining all the 12 feet, cyclists will speed on the shared use path while others travel side by sides. The path will be unpleasant and hazardous when speeding cyclists encounters pedestrians traveling side by side. The west side of the site and other areas will contain vegetated areas. All these needs contain plantings of common milkweed and other shrubs and perennials. That's for pollinators. But basically, use that shared street that shared street on the west end, that road access on the west end for the cyclists, and discourage cyclists from using that shared use path. That's the real answer to this whole thing.
Okay, time's up. Thank you. Okay, do we have any other public commenters? Okay, that's it. Based on that.
You had a tight meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Are you going to update the